All right, so we're back working on the new S10. Got some wiring done, not a whole lot. Like I said, we're trying to move very methodically through this to make sure everything's done right. The truck's just put together way too nicely to rip through it. So let's go over what I'm doing right now. I'm about to cut some holes, so I'm a little nervous about that. So we've got the battery cutoff switch here, the positive cable coming to here, and then this is the positive running underneath the length of the truck. Comes back up through the floor, and then we have it running around to that lug there, which then, so we'll be able to run off that lug and go power into like the switch panel and stuff, and then from that lug we'll be able just to go straight from there to the starter. I'm about to drill and put the other one in. I'm gonna put it right above it, it'll probably have to be above it, but that one will go ground to, we'll get it somewhere on the engine block. So that'll be our ground, and then this will also be able to, on the inside, serve as a ground for the switch panel and all that stuff. And then got some cable here on the ground that will run from the battery, the length of the truck to that lug, and then we're also going to go battery to ground. I'm gonna have to figure out how I'm gonna do that, because I want to run pretty much both of them. I want to run both of them off the negative terminal to chassis and then up to the front, where I can then go to the actually what I could probably just do, I'll figure it out. All right, so we've been plugging away at this thing for a little while now. Haven't really touched too much up in the engine bay. I got this ground wire and this terminal here put into the firewall. Power wire going to the starter. The starter's all hooked up. I found there was a 58X crank sensor in it. I had to switch it to a 24, got that hooked up. Starter's in, all wired up. Started doing, all the wiring in the back. So got the transcooler plumbed, got all of the fans back here wired, got the water pump wired, and then coming inside the truck, kind of dark, can't really see. I've got everything loomed really nice. You guys will see it when I actually, you know what, I can pop the light on in here. I'll show you how that it works. So I'll just lay it up on here for now, and then we'll do the battery cutoff switch. All right, so got some panel lights on. So like I said, I've been looming everything, so I have everything loomed off, and when I finish it, I'll actually kind of zip tie it all together so it's all running pretty much as one harness. This is the Holley inputs and outputs. Those will be all loomed as well. But so these will be all loomed together, run nicely. They come up to this panel here, which is very nicely done. And then, what did I wire up so far? So I think that's the water pump. So that's that water pump. That's the trans fan. So those are all wired up, so I have to change it. This will be lights when the lights actually get hooked up. This one is engine fan, water pump, trans fan, I think. Yeah. So I'll just relabel these. I don't need to, launch. The Holley's gonna control that. And also I have the starter button hooked up, but we have no need to hit that right now. Now I can get going on the engine bay, which the biggest pain for this is going to be mounting these coils. Partly because I haven't really solidified a place, and I have a ton of room over here, passenger side. there's like no room on the driver's side. So kicking around the idea of making them fit up there, which I think I can do, but I might just actually see if somebody can come and kind of fab up something to put them up here on this bar. We'll see, I guess. There's two holes there. They were drilled for this vacuum block. So this vacuum block sits there nicely. I don't know if I want to keep that. It does actually sit there nice. It looks good. But I think what I might do is use that spot. This side of it will be the coils for this side, that side for that side. And then I have a whole bunch of room right there that I could throw that vacuum block and still kind of make the hoses run nicely. So, I mean, the truck's coming along pretty well. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to do to it. You know, I've been tinkering around on it a little bit here and there. Now that I'm staring at this wire, I have to run alternator wiring, well, the power wire anyway. I've got the voltage regulator wire. It's just a single wire that goes to switch 12 volt. I've got that ran already. So, yeah, I mean, aside from that, the biggest nagging problem that this is gonna have is a lot of these brake lines are new and a lot of them leak. I've tightened the heck out of them and they leak. So I'm gonna have to just make all new lines and put all new fittings. It's gonna be tedious, but I mean, that's a pretty important thing about going fast is your brakes. And you know, it's got Willwood brakes all the way around, so we need to make sure all the fluid and stuff is working for it. So, and then the last kind of nagging thing is gonna be, so this only has a charge pipe that comes directly off the turbo right into the manifold, which is okay if you're on methanol. This fuel system is not equipped for methanol. It's actually not even really equipped to run E85. So I mean, I'll be able to run it, but I'd be capped at probably 700-800 horsepower. Without, I would probably need a secondary fuel pump. So the other problem is putting an intercooler on it, which there's a load of room. I could easily fit an intercooler there at the bottom. The problem is though, it won't get any air. And I really don't want to drill holes in that. So, I mean, cause yeah, that's a nice front bumper. So I don't want to drill holes in it, but I don't know. I mean, been making a ton of headway on the truck. Got the ignition coils mounted up here. What I did was I got some Motion Raceworks brackets, or they're like mounting brackets for roll cages. I ended up getting a size a little bit too big. I just took some hose, cut it in half, put it in there, sandwich it together, and we're good. So the coils are mounted up on the frame on both sides. Got ignition wires ran. What else have I done? All the CO2 stuff. Plumbed the alternator, got that wiring done. One thing that I ran into, unfortunately, is that we have a leak. So I filled it with water. For some reason, I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, so the head's kind of a little bit messed up there. The gasket doesn't seal. All I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna run a whole bunch of RTV on that and it should seal it right up. Filled it with water first, so I mean, not really a huge deal. Just drained it out and now we're gonna go ahead and fix that real quick. Outside of that, got all the wiring done and ran. We're gonna go ahead and I'll zip tie all of these together and out of the way. I again use the MSD solid state relay, so I'm running one of those. I just have to tape these wires up and basically make the loom complete so that doesn't look all messed up. This output's not used. Got the Terminator X running, everything works. Bump and scramble button work. Have a tune loaded in it. The other thing I did was I threw a flex fuel sensor on it, so we're gonna fill the first tank with a tank of E85. You know, I've never tuned a LS car ever, so this will be the first one. See how it fires up. We'll let the truck kind of learn a little bit. Won't really get too crazy with it because, you know, we've got some other stuff to do. I still have to hook up the Holly Dash 6.8 inch. It looks pretty similar to hook up, pretty simple to hook up. Yeah, I mean, outside of that, just really see if we can get it to fire off, make sure everything works. I have a lot of things to tighten up on this truck, literally. pretty much every bolt, fitting, nut, everything that I've touched on this truck has been loose. So I went through and tightened all of the fuel lines yesterday, tightened up all the coolant lines, tightened up some suspension parts. There's still some left. Last thing I gotta do is I have one hole that's messed up on the rear diff cover. I've got a tap over there. I'm just gonna go ahead and tap it. We'll get the rear diff put in, well, rear diff cover put on, torque down, and then fill that with fluid. So, I mean, we're slowly but surely getting there. This thing should fire off. It should actually fire off today, so. All right, so here's where we're at with the truck. Tried to do a first start, truck didn't start. There was absolutely no compression, and the motor was spinning over really easy when I clicked the starter, and I'm like, either that starter's really strong or like this thing has no compression. And then when I found there was no compression, I was like, man, like, you know what, let me pull the oil pan off. So I pulled the oil pan off because I was like, does this thing even have rods and pistons in it? I knew nothing about it. You know, obviously it had rods, pistons, all forged H-beam rods and all that stuff. Then I pulled the, I was gonna pull the heads off, and I was like, you know what, let me just take the valve covers, I mean, not the valve covers, the rocker arms off. Took the rocker arms off, pull all the push rods out, and I was like, you know what, let's roll the engine over. So I rolled it over and I had compression. So I was like, okay, push rod length. Checked push rod length, the push rod length was way too long. They had 7-inch 400 thousandths in this motor, whoever built it or put it together. So I measured it and I was like, okay, I'm getting about 7-inch 300 thousandths. So I got those, put them in, got the truck running, but it didn't run well. You know, still had one dead cylinder, a couple other, like, you know, the manifold was getting red hot for a few cylinders. I'm like, something's wrong. Pulled it back off. Basically was hanging the valves up. I'm like, what's going on? Like, I felt like something was up. So I pulled the heads off. And when I pulled the heads off, I found that this engine had these link bar, not even just link bar, but they were like a Comp Cams short travel lifter. They look brand new. I mean, there's, you know, like probably only a little bit of wear from me starting it and running it. The problem is when you run those, you need to have adjustable rocker arms. And this truck has stock rocker arms. So I went through, you know, looking for it. I was like, maybe I'll just get a set, you know, because those are great. They're really good for high revving, let the oil flow out of the head really nice. But I didn't feel like spending over $1,000 on rocker arms. Plus, nobody had them. So I just went ahead and ordered a set of LS7 lifters, lifter trays. So it's going back to like a stock-ish configuration. And we're gonna run the stock rocker arm. So throw it back together that way, get the preload set right, and then hopefully we can bust this thing off and have the truck running, at least running properly. But for now, I mean, got everything taken apart, which is frustrating, but at the same time, like, I bought somebody else's unfinished project, you know, third hand from somebody else who had it for, you know, they had this truck for like a week. So, you know, whatever. I've basically have had my hands all over this entire truck. It's nice to see that all of this stuff is brand new. Like the cam is brand new. These are forged pistons. Like everything looks really good. So, you know, whoever just threw this thing together, just, I mean, I guess they really didn't, either they didn't know what they were doing or they didn't care and they just wanted to get rid of it. So they made it look right and then just, you know, send it on its way. So I'm going to go ahead, throw all these lifters and stuff back in, and then we're getting fired up and see what happens.